Hello. Welcome to the Daily Faded. This is where we get faded daily and discuss the news and politics of the day. My name is Hetz. I am very happy to be with you tonight. Hope that you have a drink or a spliff or a glass of milk, something that you can relax with. September 9th, 2020. Today was quite a day, news-wise, but I'm only going to talk about a couple of things. Trump admits to lying. Trump had a bad day today. That is my humble opinion, that Trump had a bad day today. We'll get into that in a few minutes. First, the coronavirus update. This is again from ncov2019.live. Just about 28 million confirmed cases worldwide, 907,000 deaths worldwide. The United States is at 6.5 million cases with 33,977 today, which of course takes us back into the range of those 30s and 40s averages that we had been talking about for quite some time. And we're at 195,175 deaths as of today, with 1,145 deaths today. So again, that's back to the 1,000 deaths a day that we were at last week, which hasn't been the case the last couple of days. Here in California, we've had 747,000 cases, which is the most of any state in the union. And today there were 2,732 new cases, so that's a relatively low number compared to weeks gone by. And in California, we're at 13,971 deaths, and we had 136 deaths today in California. That is not a good number. That is right up near where we peaked at maybe 160 a day. So we just seem to be in a sort of holding pattern with COVID right now. And I think that that holding pattern is the holding pattern from which the school epidemics will emerge. Now that people are going back to school and we have a level of COVID in the community spread. So that is going to definitely start bringing those case counts up again, which is why the IHME from the University of Washington is now predicting 400,000 dead by the end of the year. And as always, they're repeating that that number could be significantly lower if 95% of the population would wear masks. I wanted to tell you one, man, I mean, Trump and Biden were duking it out today. And Biden was on the attack and Trump was on the defensive. It was good to watch. Again, I have no love for Joe Biden, but just Schadenfreude watching Donald Trump suffer. That's the key thing. But as much as that was the main fight, the real boss move today came from Bernie motherfucking Sanders. He had the true boss move today. Actually, yesterday was his birthday. I think he was 7,200. But he pulled the boss move today. He was in a committee meeting virtually from his home in Vermont. I assume it was his home. It looked like his home. And he was grilling the Surgeon General about fighting to get a free COVID vaccine. Said to the Surgeon General, will you commit today that you will do everything in your power to make this vaccine free to all of the American people? And let me tell you, our Surgeon General, Jerome Adams, was, let's just say he knew game when he saw game, because Bernie Sanders was sitting in front of his Bernie Sanders Public Enemy poster. So I just thought that was boss. Like, look at me, that's me on the poster with Public Enemy, Bernie Sanders. For what it's worth, the Surgeon General said yes. And then he said he would fight to make sure that cost was not a barrier for anyone, which is one of those Weasley politician things to say when you don't want to just agree, yeah, I will help, I'll do everything I can to make it free. Because that would be politically risky. Before we get to the main two stories, one other thing that I came across today was a CNBC poll. Majorities of likely voters believe that both men are mentally unfit. The mental and physical fitness of both candidates has been brought up in various ways during their campaigns, and majorities of likely voters believe that both men are mentally unfit. 55% of likely national voters, 51% of likely battleground voters say Trump is mentally unfit to be president. 52% of likely national and battleground voters say Biden is mentally unfit to be president. They're both unfit to be president. Voters are more confident in their physical fitness. 51% of likely national and 52% of likely battleground voters say Trump is physically fit to be president. They're not paying attention. 57%, so Biden has a stronger number on physical fitness. 57% likely national voters and 54% of likely battleground voters say Biden is physically fit to be president. Can we just end this whole thing with an arm wrestling match? Because I know Joe Biden would beat Donald Trump in an arm wrestling match, and it's probably more relevant than the popularity contest as to who would make a better chief executive officer of the United States. So, Joe Biden today gave a terrific speech. I always want to be honest about Joe Biden. And that means being honest about the shit that I don't like, but also being honest about it when he does something good. And he's been doing a good job with these speeches. I would like him to do a little bit more, but also don't want to ask too much based on past performances. But let me get to what Bloomberg had to say about this. Biden says Trump broke promises to bring jobs back to U.S. This was before Trump's press conference. Joe Biden accused Donald Trump on Wednesday of breaking his promise to bring jobs back to the U.S. as the Democratic presidential nominee laid out his plan to improve U.S. manufacturing with new taxes on companies that move operations offshore. He's hoping we just have poor memories, Biden said outside a United Auto Workers Union hall in Warren, Michigan. He doesn't give us much credit, but the American people are smart, decent, and they're hardworking. Biden launched a renewed focus on economic issues this week, beginning with a push to boost American manufacturing and operations. He called for a 10% tax penalty on U.S. companies that move operations overseas and a 10% tax credit for companies that create jobs in the U.S. Biden was very strong laying out his economic vision for America in this speech. Trump is, elsewhere shucking and jiving about losers and suckers, and then trying to handle the fallout of the Bob Woodward book. While Joe Biden is laying out a vision for the future of the country. Donald Trump is completely on the defensive. Joe Biden is on the march. Now, he went into some great specifics there. The 10% tax penalty on U.S. companies that move operations overseas, 10% tax credit for companies that create jobs in the U.S. he had more. There were more points than that. But my point is, he was making specifics and talking about specifics for a positive vision for the future of America and for the future of Michigan. And I thought, man, I think if I was a working class person in Michigan, that this would be my bet, is on Joe Biden. The article continues, under Donald Trump, Michigan lost auto jobs even before COVID hit, Biden said of the recession that began shortly after the coronavirus shut down much of the country. Quote, and what about offshoring? Has Trump delivered on stopping companies from shipping American jobs overseas? You already know the answer to that. Of course not. Biden also promised to reverse Trump administration policies that allow offshoring to take place and to take executive action during his first week in office to direct the federal government to buy American goods and support American supply chains in their procurement processes. And American government federal contracts are worth $600 billion a year. So that is a considerable piece of macroeconomy. Could you say that? Probably not. But a considerable piece of cash going into the American economy, money going into the American economy. So, look, Joe Biden's not running a perfect campaign. But he's running a solid campaign, and he is in control of the race right now. Donald Trump is flailing. He's flailing. He is on the ropes. You know, now he's Trump, so he'll be back. He will be back. This isn't it, it's not over yet. He'll get an edge somewhere, somehow. But Trump was having some real issues today because of the Bob Woodward book. President Donald Trump admitted he knew weeks before the first confirmed U.S. coronavirus death that the virus was dangerous, airborne, highly contagious, and more deadly than ever than even your strenuous flu, and that he repeatedly played it down publicly, according to legendary journalist Bob Woodward in his new book, Rage. You would think this stuff would start to drag this president numbers down. You know, I really hope that we see some even improving poll numbers for Joe Biden after this episode. Trump admits in his own words that it was dangerous and he knew it, and he was playing it down, lying to the American people. Let's go further into it. This is deadly stuff, Trump told Woodward on February 7th. In a series of interviews with Woodward, Trump revealed that he had a surprising level of detail about the threat of the virus earlier than previously known. Quote, pretty amazing, Trump told Woodward, adding that the coronavirus was maybe 5 times more deadly than the flu. Trump's admissions are in stark contrast to his frequent public comments at the time, insisting that the virus was going to disappear. Known for a long time that whenever Donald Trump opens his mouth, he's lying. Yes, I did. I did look it up, and it was very interesting. Thank you for mentioning that. Yes. We've known for a long time that so Trump said this is deadly stuff. This is the guy who was telling us it's all going to work out. And it's just crazy. The book, using Trump's own words, depicts a president who has betrayed the public trust and the most fundamental responsibilities of his office. In Rage, Trump says the job of a president is to keep our country safe. But in early February, Trump told Woodward he knew how deadly the virus was, and in March admitted he kept the knowledge hidden from the public. Quote, I wanted to always play it down, Trump told Woodward on March 19th, even as he had declared a national emergency over the virus days earlier. I still like playing it down because I don't want to create a panic. I still like playing it down because I don't want to create a panic. Says, did he see his own RNC? All the RNC did was attempt to drive people into panic that Joe Biden's anarchists are going to come to your suburb and ruin your wonderful American dream, suburban dream life, yada, 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 dream, whatever. All they do is terrify people, panic people. Look at 2018 with the caravans right before the election, talking about caravans of deranged migrants. Yeah, we don't need every hypochondriac to get a test, but schools need testing, businesses need testing. There, we need more effective testing than the testing we currently have. Continuing here, if instead of playing down what he knew, Trump had acted decisively in early February with a strict shutdown and consistent message to wear masks, social distance, and wash hands, experts believe that thousands of American lives could have been saved. I think that number is more like tens of millions. Tens of thousands, tens of millions. A little stoned. It's more like tens of thousands because every failure that you have in trying to respond to this pandemic cascades into multiple subsequent failures, and you get exponentially bad results from that first mistake that you made. So, not taking the virus seriously for too long. Well, Democrats didn't throw out quarantine rules for protesters. The couple of protests I've been to since the quarantine started have all been socially distanced. Now, obviously, I've seen them on TV where they're not socially distanced, but all of the ones that I've been to so far, everyone was practicing social distancing. But also, interestingly, there are no studies. They've done studies of caseloads based on when protests happen, and all of the studies so far show that the infection rate does not increase during the protests. And I think that's because most of the protesters are wearing masks. Most of the Black Lives Matter protesters are certainly wearing masks. And that's not true. That's not true. When the protests started, if you look at on a city by city basis where the protests were, what cities had protests in, and then you tracked, there weren't specific outbreaks that were linked to the protests. Unlike Sturgis, which has 250,000 cases attached to it. So anyway, I want to get back to yeah, I'm not gonna. I mean, if you throw a plane full of Antifa people in black outfits at me, then I, I don't know. I can't go any further than that. So, I'm glad you got a puppy. That's great. So this is why Trump has to demonize the media, because if people, no, they certainly didn't help, and I'm sure some people got sick from going to protests. I'm sure. Getting back to the article, Rage also includes brutal assessments of Trump's presidency from many of his former top national security officials, including former Defense Secretary James Mattis, former Director of National Intelligence Dan Coats, and former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. Mattis is quoted as calling Trump dangerous and unfit to be commander-in-chief. Woodward writes that Coats continued to harbor the secret belief, one that had grown rather than lessened, although unsupported by intelligence proof, that Putin had something on Trump. Woodward continues, writing that Coats felt, how else to explain the president's behavior? Coats could see no other explanation. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the administration's top infectious disease expert, is quoted telling others Trump's leadership was rudderless and that his attention span is like a minus number, which obviously is an accurate description of Donald Trump. His sole purpose is to get reelected, Fauci told an associate, according to Woodward. I love Dr. Fauci's comedy. It's understated, but right to the point. His attention span was a minus number. I like that. The things that Donald Trump said to Bob Woodward are so remarkable, and it's amazing that it seems like we've got a bigger news story out of Bob Woodward than the Atlantic nonsense, the Jeffrey Goldberg article in the Atlantic. Anyway, Woodward reveals new details on the early warnings Trump received and often ignored. In a January 28th top secret intelligence briefing, National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien gave Trump a jarring warning about the virus, telling the president it would be the biggest national security threat of his presidency. Trump's head popped up, Woodward writes. O'Brien's deputy, Matt Pottinger, concurred, telling Trump it could be as bad as the influenza pandemic of 1918, which killed an estimated 50 million people worldwide, including 675,000 Americans. Pottinger warned Trump that asymptomatic spread was occurring in China. He had been told 50% of those infected showed no symptoms. So there you have it. There you have it. January 28th, they knew about asymptomatic spread. January 28th. They didn't start talking about that for months. For months. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to stay agnostic on the Atlantic article from a standpoint of its veracity. I believe it because it sounds right to me. It sounds like something Trump would say. But I don't believe it because Jeffrey Goldberg is not a good journalist and has lied in the past. This is a guy who sold us the story that Iraq and al-Qaeda had connections and that there was some Iraqi connection to 9/11, which was complete and utter nonsense. And Jeffrey Goldberg used it to sell the war in Iraq. So they call him a liberal activist, but yeah, you're going with the Sagar and Jetty theory. I don't know if you watch Rising, but anyway, look, the point is Trump knew it was the biggest national security threat of his presidency. He knew he had to take it seriously. And check out Rising this morning. Yesterday, I think it's yesterday, Sagar and Jetty did something about Afghanistan on Rising. Anyway, and then the press conference happened today, and the journalists were hungry. It was nice to see them eager, all riled up, trying to go and get some, you know. And they asked Trump if he lied, and he said something to the effect of, "No, I was a cheerleader." And but he didn't say no. He didn't say no. He accepted the premise of the question that he lied to the American people. And he talked about it's important to be a leader and be confident and bullshit like that. He lied. So, look, there's a difference between keeping the panic down and lying to the public. I'm not okay with lying to the public. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay when Bush does it. I'm not okay when Obama does it. I'm not okay when Trump does it. I'm not okay when anybody does it. Especially with something so serious as this pandemic, with such life and death stakes, you know. Yeah. Anyway, you know what, guys? I think that's going to be it for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning into the Daily Faded. Please hit subscribe and like and notifications. And I will see you again tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Pacific. Thank you.